And welcome to another edition of the Hitting the Hardwood podcast, your home for all the latest Minnesota Lynx and WNBA news, analysis, and coverage. Thank you for tuning into another episode. I'm your host, Mitchell Hansen, and we're hard to believe, but we're already at the All-Star break here in the WNBA season. As we're recording this podcast, we still have a couple games left for the Minnesota Lynx, but we are nearing the All-Star break and officially the midway point in the season. It always amazes me just how fast the WNBA season goes. I mean, they could extend the games like they did this year to a record 44 games, and it still feels like it goes fast. But here we are in the middle of June, or middle of July, and we're already here to the All-Star break. The Lynx, speaking of the All-Stars, Lynx have two All-Stars this year. Nafisa Collier is one of the captains alongside Caitlin Clark. And then Courtney Williams is the other All-Star, getting her second All-Star nod, first as a Minnesota Lynx. So it'll be entertaining to watch those two not only play on the same All-Star team, which is now coached by Cheryl Reeve, but it'll be fun to see the Lynx in general leading up to the All-Star break. And how they can finish out this first half of the season. The last few weeks here, I guess you could say, leading up to the All-Star break has been a busy schedule for the Minnesota Lynx, having games almost every other day, some back-to-backs mixed in there. It has resulted in a little bit of I wouldn't say a speed bump or a kind of a bump, but it has, compared to how the Lynx started the season, it has resulted in a little bit of a bump. But Minnesota still sits atop the league. They're still the best team in the league, still leading the league in almost every statistical category. And it's been impressive to see this team play, and to hopefully see them here continue here in the second half. And it'll be interesting to see how the teams leading or out of the All-Star break, how they lead into the postseason, how they finish out the season, how they finish that second half, which teams kind of maybe rise up, and which teams fall down, and how they all start to separate themselves. So it'll be fun to watch the second half of the year. But before we get to that, like we were saying, we do have the All-Star break here coming up. It'll be played in Indiana this year, the home of Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. So it'll be it's always fun to watch those festivities and watch that not only the All-Star game, but the different competitions that are surrounding it, and also to have the players just get a well-needed rest, especially for the Minnesota Lynx having this busy stretch leading up to the break. It'll be a much-needed rest, a much-needed time off for the players and the coaches, to kind of rejuvenate and recharge and get ready for a strong second half of the regular season. So one other bit of news, there was a couple player-related tidbits here over the last couple weeks. Obviously, Carly Samuelson is out indefinitely with a foot injury. She underwent a procedure here. As we're recording this podcast, it'd be about a week ago. She'll miss about 6 to 8 weeks with that foot injury. And then more recent, Alyssa Peely, who was the Lynx first round pick in 2024, she was waived by the team leading up to the guaranteed contract deadline. So Minnesota had a decision to make. Either they would keep her on the roster and they would guarantee her contract the rest of the year, or they would waive her, and then that contract wouldn't be guaranteed. So that was a result of that. You would think that there's another move that will follow the Alyssa Peely waiving, with the roster spot open back up. But that'll be interesting to see what happens with that spot and what direction Minnesota goes. Not only with Peely's opening, but how the Carly Samuelson injury might tie into all of that as well. So we could get some news here coming up soon on what Minnesota is gonna do. I would imagine it'll probably be either at All-Star or a little bit after All-Star break. I don't think we'll see anything before then. But now that I say that, it will probably happen immediately after I'm done recording this podcast. Um, but with that said, speaking of the podcast, I'm really excited. First time guest here this week. I'm really excited to have her on the podcast. I've been messaging her back and forth for a while now, and it just never worked out. And with both of our schedules, and I'm glad we were able to make it work. It's somebody who, if you followed the Lynx, if you've watched any games, if you've just paid attention to the team, you're familiar with who this individual is and all the coverage that she has done for not only with the Minnesota Lynx, but women's basketball across all levels. High school, she talks about that a little bit, college, and obviously the Lynx in the WNBA. But Lea B. Olsen, who is a alongside Marty Gellner on the FanDuel Sports Network broadcast covering the Lynx on TV. She does a great job of covering her, and we talk a little bit about it in the podcast. But her and Marnie and used to be Sloan Martin, who was a sideline reporter. Sloan's now doing radio, but those three do a phenomenal job of covering the team, and you can sense the great chemistry that Lea B. Olsen and Marty Gellner have. They're just great personalities, and it was a really fun chat with Lea. So I want to jump right into that podcast here with Lea B. Olsen. Lea, how are you doing? Thank you for joining.
I am doing wonderful, Mitchell. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, we were talking about this before we started the recording here that we've been talking for a little over a year now to get you on the podcast, and I'm glad our schedules aligned and everything worked out to be able to get you on. I've been looking forward to it, that's for sure.
I've been waiting, so I'm excited.
Yeah,
I'm excited
well,
to be
thank
here.
you. Thank you very much. For people, I mean, people should be familiar with who you are. If anybody's watched a Lynx game or been around the Lynx, they're familiar with you. But I wanted to kind of open it up to allow you to open up or kind of discuss your background and kind of who you are and what you do on a daily basis.
Yeah, well, one thing that people might not know, I was thinking about this today when I was thinking about this podcast, is that I played for the Gophers, and then when I graduated, I had an internship with the Minnesota Timberwolves. At this point, the Lynx had not arrived yet, and so I worked in their summer basketball camps, and then I left for a couple of years and went to work for the Minnesota State High School League. And so I just kind of was trying to, my goal was to stay in sports to get to sports broadcasting, but I didn't know how to get there and I didn't have mentors or people showing me a direct route. So I worked at the high school league and kind of learned about the state high school tournaments and went to all those tournaments and did stats and all of that good stuff. And then the Timberwolves called back a couple years later and said, "Hey, we have a position in the front office. Would you want to come back?" And so I actually started with the Timberwolves as a corporate account supervisor in the marketing department. And so I was like working with their, big corporate sponsors and doing the on floor, all of the stuff that you see
Hmm.
during games and the entertainment, all of that. So it was a great job. But I was like on weekends doing broadcasting and any show people would let me on about the Timberwolves. And then the Gophers started hiring me for some analyst work. And so I was kind of building that resume. So when the Lynx came in 1999, I was actually part of a group in the front office that like sat down and figured out, okay, who could the coach be? And so it was really interesting when I think back at it. I actually sat on the committee to bring in our first coach, which was Brian Agler. And so we interviewed all these college coaches and they all came in and Glenn Taylor was part of it and myself and I think Flip Saunders was on the committee, just a
Wow.
funny mix of people. But so I've been doing stuff with the Lynx from the beginning, but it kind of progressed. Eventually, the Wolves put me into the broadcast department, and then the Lynx came, and then I was able to start doing work for them. And then I think the most important part for me was that, I work, it's changed over the years. It used to be Fox, it used to be MSC, then it was Fox Sports North, then it was Bally Sports, and now it's FanDuel Sports. And so this is the way that we bring you your Lynx games. For many years, we only did 8 to 10 games a season. And it was a huge issue, obviously, with the Lynx. They wanted more, but they weren't giving more. And then it was only maybe 3 years ago or so
Hmm.
that they finally upped it to the whole season. And so even though we've been doing these broadcasts for a long time, that really was a super small amount of games. So it really feels really good now to like be able to know that you're doing, we're going to end up doing, I think, 33 games for the Lynx this season, and the rest would be to national televised games.
Sure. That's awesome. I didn't know that. I didn't know it went back basically since day one. I know you're in your 17th season, which is would make sense, but
But
um
yeah, it was
that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's how it all began.
Yeah. The what before I want to touch a little bit on the FanDuel part of things or kind of covering the links, but before I get into that, what you've seen from essentially the beginning, not just
Mhm.
specifically with the Lynx, but just with women's basketball and the WNBA too. What are your thoughts on the rise, I guess you could say, of women's basketball? Maybe not necessarily the rise of the game, but the rise in the attention and the coverage of the game.
Well, what I think is super interesting, and one of the things that I always noticed was when the WNBA came into existence in 97, college women's basketball was really popular. And for some reason, those crowds weren't necessarily coming over to
Hmm.
WNBA games. So it was almost like we had like two different crowds at those games. So if you looked at women's basketball at the time, you would see these pockets of like in Tennessee, right, with Pat Summitt, and was selling out arenas forever. And then in Stanford, they were selling out arenas, and then UConn and LSU, all these places around the country were doing that individually. And it was almost like there was just this kind of break when it got to the WNBA. And so I thought it was really interesting when what actually kind of cracked um, it was the TV broadcast of college women's basketball is the first time that people actually saw the likes of a Caitlin Clark
Hmm.
and Angel Reese. And that's to me really what brought the two together, was because you finally had, what Caitlin had done is she brought all of these people. She stayed home, first of all, and I think that's important to note. She
Hmm.
built a whole fan base in Iowa, and then all of those people ended up coming to the WNBA with her, and obviously including the incredible way that she plays. But then we started seeing these games more. So it's to me, it was just this perfect tipping point of this unique player. The media was finally there to show it. And then all these different pockets of college basketball, which I think a lot of fans were already into, were following their teams to the WNBA.
Hmm.
I just find it really interesting to watch, and now I'm super excited because we have an opportunity now to take the game to another level for especially for the players. So hopefully with this new CBA contract, they're going to get paid a lot more. We're going to see better arenas, more teams are coming. All of that stuff is on its way, and it's been a process, but I think we've kind of seen the tipping point of that.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I always go back to the kind of comparison in a comparison to this is what Cheryl Reeve always says with new WNBA fans or women's basketball fans in general. Just come to a game and you'll be hooked. Just come into the arena, experience the game, experience the atmosphere, and you'll be hooked. And it's kind of I almost view this situation in the same light where people are now they're giving the WNBA, they're giving maybe women's basketball a chance if, maybe the casual fans that wouldn't have in the past, and they realize that it's a great product, it's a great sport, it's a great, atmosphere coming to the games. And now they're hooked, which is great. And that's all it takes is that, whether
Yep.
it's Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese or whoever it may be, it takes that one person or that one instance to just get them in, and then they stay, which is the most important
Absolutely.
thing. So
It is. And if we really saw that with those Lynx teams that were winning
yep.
championships because, like during the regular season, there wouldn't be many people in the arena. And then when those teams started coming through, um, and they were starting to win, then all of a sudden you saw different fans in the building.
Hmm.
Um, and and so people like winning teams, let's face that.
Hmm.
And that's a real reality. But then also the talent was rising. And so when Maya Moore arrived in 2011, she brought a lot of people into Target Center because her following came with her from UConn. So it's a building process. And I think somewhere in there, people started thinking and believing that it was really only a niche sport and that people weren't going to come watch it.
Hmm.
Um, and I was just kind of the belief that there just hasn't been enough time. I mean, it's just not. And so I'm surprised actually that it's actually been this quick. And so it's been a pleasure, certainly to watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to covering, what's it been like for you to be able to cover, the WNBA, specifically the Lynx, and also doing it with the fun crew that you get to do it with
Yeah,
on FanDuel Sports.
we have an incredible crew, and everyone knows if you get to work with the one and only Marnie Gellner, then you are a lucky, lucky person.
And dancing pregame now. I've been seeing those.
Yeah, Natisha Heidemann is really trying to get everyone onto the dance floor out there. Yes, we have it's a great crew. It's people who are committed to the game, of trying to bring a really great broadcast forward. It's one of the things that's happening right now, obviously, with cable TV is it's kind of upside down right now because of streaming.
Mhm.
And so what was unfortunate for us this year is that we no longer carry a sideline reporter. And last year we had Sloan doing the games with us, right? Sloan Martin, and she's amazing. And so she had the opportunity, though, to slip over to radio. So her presence still being felt by Lynx fans. Um, so there's always kind of an ebb and a flow to what we're doing, but it has been because Marnie has done it so long, I have done it so long. We have people, behind the scenes who have been here a really long time. It just makes for a much better broadcast, in my opinion. And one of the things that's really different from, from probably doing broadcasts 7, 8 years ago, or even 5 years ago, is that now you have the game and you do a broadcast, and then there's kind of an afterlife of the broadcast because of all the social media aspect of it, and people are taking pieces of the game and they're sending it out, and calls they like, things they didn't like, all of that's kind of the next phase of the broadcast. And so that's been kind of just interesting to watch how much that has changed throughout the years.
Do you want to get your business in front of a passionate and dedicated fan base? Do you want to support the ever-growing landscape of women's sports? Hitting the Hardwood Network is here for you. We offer partnerships and sponsorships at various levels, including advertising on the Hitting the Hardwood and Links Happy Hour podcast, the Hitting the Hardwood newsletter, Patreon page, website, social media, and much more. If you want to partner or sponsor Hitting the Hardwood, please reach out to us at hittingthehardwood@gmail.com, and let's chat about how we can work together to support the ever-growing landscape of women's sports and help the game grow. I want to give a shout out to our current partners here at Hitting the Hardwood and those who help make Hitting the Hardwood happen. Thank you to Pentz Homes, Fantasy Sports Evo, Homage, and Better Edge for your continued partnership and your continued support of Hitting the Hardwood and Links Happy Hour, and your willingness to help make the game grow. Yeah, and you talked a little bit about the chemistry that you and Marnie and the entire crew, broadcast crew has. You as a viewer, you can 100% sense that. Like you can tell when a broadcast crew is maybe, they just started working together or they don't have that experience. Like everything that you guys do, you pick up on each other throughout the game. You guys can almost finish each other's sentences sometimes. Like it's
Yes.
you can sense that, which makes I mean, I'll admit it makes it for an awesome experience from a viewer standpoint and just a fan standpoint that you never have to. I mean, I even view it with, Michael Grady and Jim Peterson on the Wolves side. Like you could
Yes,
just
it's
tell they
amazing.
have great chemistry and it makes for an incredible fan experience. And the coverage and the information and just everything that you and Marnie have provided, it's been great from a fan experience, and it's just I feel like I even learn something every broadcast, whether it's
Good.
stats, information, what dance moves Marnie's doing before the game, whatever it may be.
That's critical
It's
too. I mean, it's
yeah,
super
yeah,
important.
exactly. But no, it's phenomenal, and I just I'm one of the many people that thank you for your coverage and for all the information and the insight and everything that you provide as well. It's actually it's hard to believe it's been how many years it's been, but it's just like every
Yeah.
year that's you guys are the voices that we all are accustomed to hearing, and it's been great from a fan side and just a fan of the game. So.
Well, thank you. That's really appreciated. And we're so grateful to have the opportunity to do what we do. And
Hmm.
we talk a lot about, that is the one nice thing about being around this team for so long and getting to know the players and knowing the coaching staff and Lindsay Whalen and
Hmm.
Brunson and working with them on the Wolves side too. It's like you really, really have a view and an insight into this team that a lot of people don't have access to. And
Right.
so we're always trying to figure out ways like how can we get that piece out to the viewers.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's been really, really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's awesome. Talking a little bit about the play on the court. We're obviously at the basically the halfway point. All-Star Weekend is just about here as people are listening. What have your thoughts been so far? We'll start with league wide. What any surprises? Kind of taking a step back and looking at the overall league that have kind of stood out to you so far in the first half.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different surprises. I would say one, probably the biggest one for me is the Golden State Valkyries
Hmm.
being as impressive as they have been. And I didn't even know that that would be possible for a startup team to have the success that they're having. And when you kind of first saw that team, when they first put it together, it looked like a random group of players.
Hmm.
And now they've really turned into a team, and then they're kind of showing you how much effort really does matter in this league. And then role players are getting an opportunity to be have key roles on teams, and that just shows you how loaded the WNBA is. So I would say that's probably one of the ones that stands out the most to me. I would also say I've been a little surprised on Las Vegas. I thought they may have some issues this season just because when you do make a key change in
Right.
Kelsey Plum going, you knew something was going to go different, and that's key. But I'm surprised that they only have 10 wins to this point. And
Hmm.
so and what it reminds you of is just how quickly there's this delicate balance when you have really good teams and just how quickly that can be thrown off balance.
Oh yeah.
And so obviously, that's a team to watch for the second half of the season, and I think there's a couple of different teams like LA is another team. Like they should the players on that team, they have so much talent. They're gonna I think they're gonna be really dangerous in the second half of the season and
Hmm.
when they're fully healthy. And Phoenix, like how do they have so many good players on that Phoenix team? So this is one of the reasons why I thought it was so critical that the Lynx get off to a really good start
Hmm.
because you knew that they were bringing back all five of their starters and that they were bringing back their coaching staff. And so when you saw all the kind of chaos around the WNBA with seven new head coaches coming in and all of these teams kind of blowing up their squads, I thought, the Lynx have to get off to a quick start and take advantage of that.
Hmm.
And I think they've done that. And now I think the second half of the season, as soon as we get through the All-Star, if that's kind of the break, that I think that it's going to become more difficult for Minnesota because teams are getting healthy, they're getting comfortable, coaches are getting comfortable.
Right, exactly. I agree with you with specifically when it comes to Las Vegas. It just feels like they're going to figure it out. And it
Yes.
just seems like they're way too talented to not figure it out. But they definitely to me are a second half team that I think is going to make a strong push. I've also kind of been maybe not surprised, but kind of surprised with Washington to some extent with just
Sure.
how fast their rookies have kind of made a difference on that team. Yes, they're talented. I think we all expected that they would come in and contribute right away, but
Mhm.
just what they've been able to do is to me, it's been more than what I thought that they would do at this point of the season. But it's kind of interesting to watch those the 6 through 9 seeds, that
Yeah.
being as we're recording this podcast, Indiana, Washington, Golden State, Las Vegas. Like they're kind of in a constant they're moving up and down and kind of interchangeable at this point. But they're all very streaky right now, and
They
you
are.
feel like they're just gonna at one. I mean, they'll in the second half, I think will be very telling, and those teams will start separating themselves a little bit and kind of jumping up the standings. But it's been a very curious first half, or kind of confusing to some extent.
so
to
too.
watching some of these teams. But and then
Yeah.
you look at like you mentioned Los Angeles. I'm just looking at the standings here. Like the surprising thing to me is they're 2-8 at home, which is
Yes.
it that is very shocking because I mean everybody else with the exception of Connecticut, they're around the 500 mark or you're over 500 at home. I mean the Lynx
Right.
obviously are 11-0, but to be 2-8 at home is
That's
very interesting to me.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what that's about for
Mhm.
that team, but you're right. We know that to win in the WNBA, you have to be able to win your home games. And
Right.
so that's something telling about that team. But again, like a team that hasn't been healthy all season. And that's the
Hmm.
other thing is like we have come across a bunch of teams when they have really not been fully loaded.
Right.
And so like it's just kind of, I don't even know how the coaches are doing it because you can't really look at past games anymore because you look at the lineup, but it's totally different.
Oh yeah.
And and I think when Phoenix got us the other day, it was like that team was not a team that we had played before, even though we had played them, right? It was
Hmm.
just lineup was really different. And so um, health always playing a key piece in any season. But I really felt like we have early in the season come across teams when some of their key players weren't in.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Specifically when it comes to the Lynx, how about what are your early thoughts on the Lynx? They obviously got off, I mean, they are still off to a red hot start, but they've kind of now some of the scheduling with the kind of the grueling schedule they're going through right now leading up to the All-Star break is kind of
Yeah.
resulted in a little bit of a bump. I don't really want to say a bump, but it's somewhat of a bump compared to what happened earlier on in the year and in kind of the start they got off to. But what are your thoughts been so far on Minnesota?
Well, one, I think they look like a team that is well coached and they look like a team that has played together before. So just exactly what we talked about. They've taken advantage of that. I do think like in every team is going to go through it. So we know this is going to be true for every team, but this piece of the schedule has been brutal. And I feel like you can see kind of the players kind of pushing through some of these games, just tired, just trying to kind of get to the end of the game, knowing what to do, but having a hard time getting there. And so I'm sure the All-Star break, I'm sure they're looking at it like 2 games to go, and that I think will be really critical for Minnesota this year. But I love what I'm seeing. Um, I love that their style of basketball is just really enjoyable to watch. And one of the things that I thought was so funny, one of the other broadcasts that I do is for the state high school basketball tournaments, so
Hmm.
with the girls. And so I'm talking to all the high school coaches who have their teams at the state tournament, and they're all talking. And I hadn't heard this in past years. We're trying to build a team like the Lynx. We're trying to show them that if you pass the ball, if you move on defense, if you help on the backside, you're going to have a good team. And so it was just kind of cool to see that, like, this team has really been um, kind of just what fundamentally strong basketball looks like.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't think we intimidate. I don't think the Lynx intimidate a lot of different teams, but when they come in, they handle business and they
Hmm.
do what they're supposed to do. Um, and so I really, really think this team is absolutely on pace, maybe a couple games ahead of where I thought they might be at this point.
Hmm. Yeah, one thing that has really, especially in this kind of grueling stretch leading up to the All-Star break, is Minnesota's depth. I mean, you look at the day game against the Los Angeles Sparks about a week ago, and they Natisha Heidemann coming off the bench and playing, outstanding. She's been playing great as of late to begin with, but the depth on this team, and that's going to be to me a big key down the stretch. I mean, you're going to get to the end of the season, you're going to have injuries in the second
Yes.
half. You're going to have fatigue. You're going to have, especially in the playoffs when you're in a series, you need players like that off the bench that are going to come in and step in. And that's going to make it tough for a team to game plan against too, because you have so many different weapons that can come in and attack you and kind of take care of business and take over the game at any point. But that's one thing that not a lot of teams have, especially we're seeing that with teams like you mentioned earlier with injuries. They don't have a lot of those players that can
No.
just come in and produce off the bench like that. And Minnesota's just been able to swap those in as needed. And it makes a huge difference. And that's one thing I think we anticipated coming into the season with the depth on this team, but the how big of a role they've played to this point in the season, I think has been kind of remarkable.
You're right about that. And I think one of the things we saw last year when the Lynx were going on that run through the playoffs to the championship game was like Alana Smith was, she was so beat up by
Hmm.
the end of that run. It was just kind of hard to watch her have to battle that much. Now she's going to need to do that again this year. But I think with Jessica Shepard and the
Yep.
way that she's playing, um, I mean, I'm sure you believe this too. I mean, Jessica could probably start on any team in the
Hmm.
WNBA.
Hmm.
And so for her to come off, but the way she's playing offensively this year, her moves down low and then her ability to see her teammates, there was a couple passes and the last game that they played that was like, what? So like we've had, and you mentioned Natisha Heidemann, those two players in particular have lifted their games to another level, I believe.
Hmm.
And I think that will be needed for the Lynx to get through to as they're trying to get to their goal this year. Um, and then I think kind of an X factor piece would be Diamond Miller
Hmm.
is, and we always talk about her, how she brings something so different to this Lynx team. And it is exactly what the Lynx need because it is athleticism and strength and rebounding and all of those things. But it's a tough role to play as well,
Oh
right?
yeah.
When you only get so many minutes and you're coming in and you need to do something right away for your team. But I'm really anxious to kind of keep an eye on Diamond as we move here because I think she could be a key piece too.
Yeah. It kind of going back to Jess Shepard a little bit.
Mhm.
It reminds me a lot of Natasha Howard in the championship Lynx teams of her just coming off the bench, being kind of that bruiser, but somebody that can come in and do all of the little things and plays a key role in the paint off the bench.
Yep.
It's crazy how to me similar those two are in the roles that they played on those various teams. But that is now that's nothing against Dorky Uhas, but that's something different. Like it's a completely different aspect that Jess Shepard kind of provides, and she can. We've seen it. I don't know how many times this year she can do everything, and she can help her team offensively too. She's just a
Absolutely.
complete player, and it's
And I like she brings a little toughness. Like
yep.
I'm always thinking like, who's going to be our enforcer if we need someone to protect feet, right?
Hmm.
Like that's where my head is sometimes watching games. And I'm like, Jessica,
Yep.
Jessica will handle anything and she will let people know she's not intimidated. She's not worried about how big you are, how physical you play. Like that matters. Um, and so I think her edge is really needed for
Hmm.
this Lynx team in particular.
Yeah, I agree. When it comes to something maybe that you didn't expect that you've seen so far, is there anything that comes to mind when it comes to this Lynx team?
Let's see here. Something I didn't expect. You know,
I'd
you
say
know,
for me, it would be
yeah,
like the Diamond Miller aspect of things.
yeah,
Like I didn't expect her to, especially after, I mean, yes, injuries played a role, but the
sure.
last couple years she's kind of seen her amount of play and just kind of her availability kind of dwindle. And I honestly I wasn't expecting her to really have much of a role again this year, and
Yes,
credit to her. She's
agreed.
she's just stayed at it. She has a great attitude, and she's earned her opportunity, and she's made the most of that opportunity. So that to me, that's kind of
Yeah,
something.
that's a
Maybe
great
Natisha
one.
Heidemann too, and her
That's what I was
production.
going to say. I would say you're right with those two.
Hmm.
Because one thing, well, let me just finish on Diamond
Hmm.
is I just think it's one of the hardest things to watch after her having that great rookie season and how dynamic she is, the energy and her willingness to work on
Yep.
her game, and then to have the injuries. And we know that this is part of the game. It's just really hard to watch. And so her mindset is one of, she's just got a locked in mentality. And that's
Hmm.
one thing I love about her is she's an energy player, willing to do what she has to do. And so if she can stay healthy, um, yes, I agree. Like the way she's playing is going to be absolutely critical for the Lynx.
Hmm.
Um, and then Natisha, the thing that really strikes me about her is that she too could go play somewhere and be a starter,
Right.
and as she was before she arrived, right? And so her willingness to take the role that she has with this team, and I just think it's a really tough role, and she's so good at it. She brings energy. She's does a great job of managing, being a floor general when she's out there, and she's fearless when she's attacking the basket.
Hmm.
So it's her level, I feel like has really lifted. I feel like her confidence this year is a little bit different than last year. And I think last year she was struggling a little bit with her shooting. Um, and so it's just those little tweaks, those little differences in someone's game that you're like, oh wow, this is gonna this is really gonna be helpful for the Lynx down the stretch.
Hmm. Yeah, one thing too that I never really thought of as somebody as kind of an outsider looking at the game, but when Lindsay Whalen and Courtney Williams were talking about, or before the season, they were talking about this, that how big of a difference year two makes for a player within the same system. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing. Yes, Courtney Williams is thriving once again, but I think we're really seeing that with Natisha Heidemann because it is different
Sure.
when you're in a system, especially at that position, at the point guard position, to be familiar with everything that's taking place. You have more weight on your shoulders when you are the floor general, and I think that also getting comfortable in the role that she's in too, it makes a difference. But I think you can tell she's more comfortable this year. She's just more confident in
Yeah.
what she's doing. You could say that with even Diamond Miller too, that they seem more comfortable, which is their play is definitely showing that. But I never really thought of it in that way where how different a year can make, or just being a part of the system for a year. That first year is kind of like your learning year, and then after that you kind of know what to expect and you kind of know your role. But it's definitely you can definitely tell, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons, Mitchell, we talked about why it's so critical to bring back your players.
Yep.
And so when you looked around the league and some teams you couldn't recognize at all, you knew that there is going to be some major growing pains.
Hmm.
And when you have a new head coach coming in, changing a system, that takes a while for players to connect with. And so you're absolutely right for Natisha Heidemann, for Diamond Miller, these types of players, for them to be able to step back into something that's exactly the same. Maybe a tweak here and there with some of the
Hmm.
coaches, but that's it. You can see they're just kind of feeling really comfortable in the space that they're in. And that's kind of the thing with athletes, right? Is you got to get them in this space that they're confident, that they're comfortable, they feel like their role matters. And and then you kind of get this sweet spot for them to kind of show what they can do.
Right, absolutely. Now that we're talking about this a little bit earlier, just the midway point in the season, but if you could hand out some awards, well, I guess who would you hand? I can about guarantee. Well, I shouldn't say guarantee. I can about guess who you're gonna say for MVP, but let's do MVP, most improved, and maybe sixth player. Who would you think are
Okay.
deserving of those three?
Okay, so right, let's just go right into Nafisa Collier. And 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 I love it because I love that the world is figuring out who Nafisa Collier is. We've
Yeah.
known it because we've seen it up close and understand it, but I really don't think that the rest of the league was sold on it, even though
Hmm.
she was the second best player in the league last year. Um, I think this year has really been her kind of coming out party for people to go, yeah, she is so efficient, and
Hmm.
that's really it. When you're that efficient day in and day out, every single game, you're doing what you do. I don't see um, that anyone else wins that award.
Hmm.
So that one feels pretty easy. Um, I would say I was trying to kind of think about the differences here with six woman and most improved because um, we just talked about them, but I think Natisha Heidemann and Jessica Shepard can fit into these two categories. I
I
think
agree.
maybe the most improved nod would maybe go to Jessica Shepard for her
Hmm.
growth and the rebounding and her reliability and her she leveled up her offensive game.
Hmm.
And so I would probably go that route and then six woman nod to Natisha for what she does when she comes into a game, when she gives an instant change.
Hmm.
Um, I think that piece of um, being that six man kind of knowing like I got to come in, keep everything up, keep everything high. And sometimes I have to come in and make sure and insert the energy that hasn't been there yet, you know? So um, I think that would be the route that I would go for those two.
Yeah, I was just gonna to basically say this the same thing as you. Is it seems like they could be interchangeable in
Hmm.
those last two, but I didn't really think of it that way. Where when it comes to the sixth woman of the year, like you were talking about what Natisha does when she comes into the game, and that's what you think of when you think sixth player is somebody that comes in and makes a difference and is that spark plug immediately and produces. And
Right.
not saying Jess Shepard doesn't, but she's
Right.
just improved her overall game, and Natisha Hyman
Yes.
can just take it over. And yeah, that's no, I definitely agree
Like
with it.
that.
No complaints on my end.
All right, good. We're on the same page here.
To round things out, I wanted to go back to just your time covering the Lynx and just being around the Lynx. Do you have a favorite memory? Do you have a favorite season, favorite memory in particular from your years covering?
You know, there are a lot of them. I will first overall I'll say that it's definitely kind of some of the relationships and
Hmm.
especially this year having Lindsay Whalen back because she's one of my favorite human beings on the planet, but just, you know, her play and all her things that make me so happy that she's part of this Lynx squad and she
Hmm.
makes and that can be something to note as well for Natisha Heidemann as being and Courtney to how the impact of Lindsay Whalen on their games. But so I would say first and foremost, just the ability to have to know and meet and interview and be around these incredibly strong, amazing women has been by far the best part. But probably the biggest memory was the 2011 year for
Hmm.
me because, you know, we hadn't won before. And I was starting to think, oh gosh, are we just not going to win? And what does it take to win? And what does that look like? And all of those thoughts were kind of in my head at that point. And I remember when Maya Moore first arrived in Minnesota. And I actually remember her very first practice because I was just so curious about her and what could she really be this good? And Maya was the type of person, just her presence alone lifted everybody else up because you didn't want to be the person messing up around Maya Moore. So it was just funny. It was like a practice and everyone was like just playing so hard and everything just looked better because she was there. And it was kind of like, ooh, this is going to be really fun. And so
Hmm.
I think that first championship that we really could do it and we could be the best. And it's kind of weird now because I think that was like a three-game series
Yeah, I
back
think
in
you're
the day.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just kind of crazy now to think like it sounds easy. It wasn't easy, but like
Right.
three games, yeah. But yeah, so I would say probably that year was really fun. It was, and even though we talk about the hype of what's happening in the WNBA right now, that year from Minnesota, we were getting fans who had never come to games before.
Hmm.
And so that had the same vibe of like new people coming and um, you know, the great Maya Moore on that court and all the other players who surrounded Maya on that team. And so I would probably go with that 2011 season and then that championship.
Hmm. That was kind of the stage setter too for not
Yeah.
only that season but just that title and it's crazy to think about how far or what
How
they've done
far?
since that. And it's hard to believe that's so long ago already.
Isn't it nuts?
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
that's crazy. And then that's one thing too, if you think about those teams and then
Oh yeah.
this Lynx team, they're so different.
Yeah.
You know, like those teams were built on like the backs of all these Hall of Famers, you know,
Hmm.
and this team is going to probably be, you know, built on the back of one Hall of Famer, maybe.
Right.
And, but like that's what's so cool. And I guess, I think in that space, you have to give the credit to the Coach Reeve and what
Hmm.
she's able to put together. It's just so different. So um, it's made it really fun this year to see, and last year watching this Lynx team and what they've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, it's fun you talked about the Hall of Famers too. It's cool to see two of them on the coaching staff. Like it's
Yeah.
awesome to see Rebecca Brunson and Lindsay Whalen back, with the Lynx, just obviously in a different capacity. But
Mhm.
it also makes, I think, a lot of us who've just been even, we're a part of those that dynasty teams or covering those dynasty teams, makes you feel old a little bit
It
of
does.
just seeing them
It
now on the
does.
coaching staff. But
There's no doubt about that. I feel old all the time, Mitchell.
no, it's really cool to see though, and it's fun to see that fire back in them too that we saw so often as players, and
Yeah.
now being able to help just a new wave of Lynx basketball, but that it's really fun to watch.
Yeah, it's
But
pretty incredible just thinking about like all the great players that have come through here. And I love that we get all the ceremonies,
oh
of
yeah,
hanging banners and then putting Hall
hmm
of Fame on the banners and all the things happening because then we get a chance to see all of the players again. But
yeah.
yeah, we have been fortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Leah, we are all as viewers and fans of the Lynx are fortunate for your coverage and everything that you do to not only lift up the Lynx, lift up the league, lift up the game. And I'm really appreciative that you joined the podcast. I'm glad we were able to make it work, and looking forward to a fun rest of the season and even more coverage from you. So I appreciate you joining, and I appreciate all that you do.
Oh, thank you so much. And right back at you. And we were talking before what you said, 10th or 11th year.
This is 10, year 10 for me.
10. So
Yeah.
congratulations on that and the incredible work you have done.
Well, thank you.
And yeah, it's just such an honor and a privilege. So thank you. Really appreciate being on.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again soon.
Let's do it.
Thank you once again to Leah for joining the podcast. As I mentioned, Leah is phenomenal, A plus human being, and she's even better at her job. But I've really appreciate her joining and taking time out of her day, on a game day, as we're recording this, here on Monday, July 14th. She's getting ready for the Lynx game tonight. So I know game days can be busy. So I appreciate her taking the time in providing this podcast to all of you. I also want to give a shout out to our sponsors here at Hitting the Hardwood. If first of all, if you or someone you know want to sponsor or are interested in sponsoring Hitting the Hardwood, we have various different sponsorship levels. You can go to our partners page on our website, click the sponsorship levels button right at the top, and you can check out that sheet that's in there. And also you can, if there's something in there that or if you have another idea that you want to bring forth, if you have different ideas, feel free to email us, hittingthehardwood@gmail.com. Happy to chat, happy to see what we can do to not to work together and to continue to help the game grow. But with our partners here at Hitting the Hardwood, as we sit right now, I want to give a huge shout out to Pentz Homes and Fantasy Sports Evo for their continued support and sponsorship of Hitting the Hardwood. Pentz Homes, you've heard me say it a million times. Nate Pentz and the Pentz Home team should be your top choice for whether you're buying or you're selling your home. They're proud to support you in your home ownership goals. Check them out at pentzhomes.com, PENTZHOMES.com. The second one is Fantasy Sports Evo. It is a new way to play fantasy sports, as you all might be familiar with whether it's FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever it may be. You fill out lineups with players. With Fantasy Sports Evo, you do that with teams. So it's a different way of playing fantasy sports, which to me is very enjoyable. You can if and to go on top of that, if you go visit the Fantasy Sports Evo website, you sign up for an account, use the promo code LYNX, you receive a 100% deposit match plus $10 in playable credits. So that should be enough to convince you to at least go check them out. But thank you once again to Pentz Homes and Fantasy Sports Evo. I also want to give another shout out to our friends at Better Edge and Homage. Better Edge is a sports betting company based in Minnesota, in Minneapolis based, I should say. That is they've been supporters since day one. And they are great with supporting women's basketball, supporting the Lynx specifically. And they want to also give back to you. If you go visit betteredge.com, bettor edge.com/links, you receive a free $20 when you use the promo code LINKS. So go check out our friends at Better Edge. And then Homage is a vintage clothing store. They do vintage merchandise, including WNBA and Lynx gear. You can find the links to where, or URLs, I should say, to where you can purchase WNBA gear and Lynx gear by visiting our partners page on our website. So thank you to all of them for supporting Hitting the Hardwood. And as I mentioned, if you want to support Hitting the Hardwood, or you know somebody that wants to support Hitting the Hardwood, check out our partners page on our website. Send us email at hittingthehardwood.com. Reach out to me on social media, whatever it may be, and happy to chat on how we can work together. One other thing is a location to get exclusive news information that you won't get anywhere else is on our Patreon page, part of our HTH. I always say with Hitting the Hardwood Patreon community. You check that out at patreon.com/hitting the hardwood. Just for a small fee each month, you can get exclusive news, early access to podcasts like this one, and so much more. That is a way to support our work here at Hitting the Hardwood and being able to provide you with this podcast, as well as the Lynx Happy Hour podcast. And I will drop a teaser that there's another announcement coming up. More on that coming soon. But you can go check out patreon.com/hitting the hardwood, and please consider supporting, because we really do enjoy bringing this content to you, and we'd love to do it for many years to come. With that said, I want to say thank you to all of you for joining again. I appreciate you all following along the season so far, the first half of the season. Content's going to continue as always throughout the rest of the regular season, throughout the postseason, throughout the off season even. But it'll continue here at Hitting the Hardwood. We're really excited to continue to provide you some great coverage. As I mentioned in a little bit of a teaser, we do have a little bit of an announcement coming here in the next week or two about more to come on the Hitting the Hardwood team and the content that we provide. But I'm really excited about that as well. And we couldn't do it without all of you listening. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. Thank you for reaching out on social media. Thank you for following, content, whether it be on social media or written content, podcasts, whatever it may be. We really appreciate it, and we really do enjoy bringing this all to you. So enjoy the rest of the first half of the season. We don't have much left, but enjoy the rest of the first half of the season. Enjoy All-Star break, and let's get this second half of the season going, and let's inch closer to the playoffs. So thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next time.